Narcissism is a serious personality disorder. You ask any victim that's been on the receiving end if they don't think it's serious and see what reaction you get. So there are too many terms that are used which cause people to think it's something less serious. So there is always going to be narcissists on the planet. How do you deal with it? You learn to recognize what we are.
I just wanted to say thank you. You really helped to kind of save my life in a certain way. And the reason I brought you on is because I talk about cults on my channel, which to me is the same as being in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, a sociopath. And I wanted to invite you on to inform the audience of this most important subject. So with that background, could you please tell people a little bit about you and how you came to be a narcissistic psychopath? Friends, welcome back. We are very lucky to be joined for a fifth interview by my favorite and the only narcissist I will ever let back in my life under any circumstances whatsoever, not least due to this man's knowledge and wisdom on the subject of narcissism in the way of HG Tudor. How are you doing, HG?
Great to be back, Doug. Thank you very much, and thank you for that kind introduction. I'm pleased that you're letting me into your life and to share my wisdom and knowledge with all of your viewers also. So I'm very pleased to be conversing with you again.
Thank you, man. And we really appreciate it. You know, HG, I came across your work back in 2016 when you had the Knowing the Narcissist YouTube channel. That's the first time I'd heard of you. Yeah. And I was in a relationship that, as you know, I came out of a cult, then I was sussing my family situation with my narcissistic mother, and then I was in relationship after relationship, you know, with basically narcissists. That's all I could have, or that, you know, that's all I felt like. I didn't know anything about that. And when I ran across your material, you not only saved my life and got me out of a very, very dangerous relationship, but I've never been the same since. And I just wanted to, for people that are coming across your work for the first time, I know that you've done some amazing series that keep attracting more and more new listeners. Maybe they come in because they listen to your Putin series, or you're covering a very in-depth, very non-tabloid and serious discussion on, you know, the slap incident that happened with Will and Jada Smith, etc. So I imagine you have new people coming in. And for the listeners out there, what would you say to somebody that just maybe innocently stumbles across narcissism? Because unless you're ensnared by it, a lot of people don't necessarily know anything about it. Yeah. So if they come across your material and they have this light bulb moment and they realize that perhaps their spouse, their best friend, some intimate relationship that they're involved with, they suddenly realize they're dealing with a monster. Subsequently, you know, there's an emotional trauma and confusion and fear that kicks in. What would you say to people that come across your information for the first time, where they're actually kind of had this moment happen, and how do they get started on dealing with all this?
First of all, the fact that they've come across my work gives them access to an unrivaled explanation about my kind and the dynamic with our victims, and they should immerse themselves in the vast repository of information that I've created both on my YouTube channel and also on my blog, knowing the narcissist at narcsite.com. Fill your boots, listen, read. Now, many of the things that I will talk about, that I write about, will resonate with you, and you'll have more and more of those light bulb moments. That's precisely what happened to me. Many times I see in the comments, Doug, people write things such as, "Are you my narcissist, HG?" or were you a fly on the wall in my house, HG? Or how do you know this is precisely what was said? And that demonstrates the efficacy of my information, because I know my kind inside out. So I'd encourage people when they first come to it, there's such a breadth of work there for you. Immerse yourself in it. Some of it won't apply to you. Some of it you think that's not quite what happened, but much of it will do. And then that will help you, because it will establish my credentials with you in terms of enabling you to think, this guy knows what he's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Of course I do. But a new person that comes along has to be able to accept that the purveyor of the information is an expert and knows what they're talking about. Now, I could talk for the next half hour about why my work's so brilliant. But I quite simply say this: let it speak for itself. Listen to it, read it, and you'll see how good it is, and you can be the judge of it. If it's too difficult for you to handle and swallow, that's fair enough, and you can go on and perhaps find alternative sources of information which are a little easier. They won't give you the help that I will, but there are some useful places also out there. You won't get the inside track inside the narcissist's mind in the way that you would get from me, but for some people they do struggle. But for most people, they recognize this is absolutely fascinating, brilliant. I'm immersing myself in it. I'm learning so much. Others, I feel a bit queasy. I feel a bit uneasy listening to some of this, but I recognize how helpful it is. Embrace it. And then as you start to have the light bulbs, consider, is there anything else of my services that could assist you? Do you want to know that you're dealing with a narcissist? Sure, use the narc detector. Do you want to speak to me to get bespoke help upon the exact situation that you find yourself in? Then you can arrange that. But the starting point is get amongst the material, immerse yourself in it, aid your understanding, establish my bona fides in terms of my ability, and then you can make informed decisions about where you want to go next in your learning.
That's a great answer. What about, do you have any advice, HG? Sometimes people will leave comments or they'll send me emails, and I totally understand this, is that they get triggered. And you have a way, I know this from personal experience, like I told you, 2016, 2017, I listened to your videos every fucking day, man. Mm-hmm. And it was because it penetrated. And like you said earlier, you were talking like, were you my narcissist? So that for some people, not for me, because I wanted, at that point in my life, I wanted to know the truth no matter what. Give it to me. Like it was that penetration that really sets you apart. But it can be intimidating for some people too. Not only your voice, you know, you're very confident. You have this stentorian voice. It can be intimidating to people. I personally like it, but I understand how people, they can hear that you're a narcissist, that you are who you say you are. What would you say to people that maybe get triggered, but they need this information? I try to tell people, try to just absorb it, but some people can't handle it, HG, and they might go to a secondary source that's going to kind of lead them astray. So it's a tough line to walk sometimes, no?
It is, but I'm not going to pull any punches. There isn't HG Light that I can direct you to and say, oh, this is the channel for people that are slightly triggered, where I lean in and speak, everything's going to be all right.
I understand.
There isn't any of that. Why? Because that would mislead people. Mm-hmm. Because the vast majority of people understand that when they come to me, they know that I am what I am. Mm-hmm. And that, they realize, helps them. I often talk about slapping people about the face with the frozen cod of logic to get them out of that emotional thinking, to cause them to understand what they're dealing with. If I started doing all the cuddly, hand-holdy stuff, and I know how to do it because I've learned how to do it, but I would be misleading people, which would mean I would be less effective, because what they would think is that I'm there as somebody that they can just talk to about all of their problems. No, I'm here to get you across the line. It's shit being involved with a narcissist. I get that. But if you want to spend an hour telling me how crap it is, you're wasting your money. You can tell me all of your circumstances and I'll listen, of course, so that I can then pick it apart for you and help you understand. But the fact is, there will be people who are triggered by me. I'm not going to change, so you have a choice. You either decide I can't deal with this fellow and go elsewhere. Well, it's your loss, but I can understand that if you find me too difficult to listen to. But I would encourage people to push through that discomfort, because a short period of discomfort, the gain on the other side of that is monumental. You only have to look at the testimonials. You know yourself, Doug, my friend, from what we've talked about and what you've learned from it, and all of the other people. There will always be people that won't like me. There will always be people who find difficulty accessing my work. I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority know of the effectiveness of it. And I would encourage anybody at first to go, I find his work triggering. Look at it this way. Don't see the triggering as a weakness. See it as the fact that it demonstrates how genuine this work is and how much you need it to help you. Turn that weakness around into a strength. I found the real deal here. This work resonates with me. Yes, it makes me feel uneasy, but I know that he now has the tools, because he evidently understands himself and his kind inside out. This guy is best placed to help me. And the fact that I'm still being triggered by this proves that I need the help. So embrace that and think, I'm not going to let that work against me. I'm going to push through it, get through that period of discomfort, and embrace the reward that's awaiting on the other side.
Well frickin' said, man. HG, to the listeners, we've covered quite a bit of information in the first 4 videos, so we're not going to rehash what we've already covered. And HG has a ton of information available, which we're going to talk about at the end, how you can avail yourself of his services. But one of the things that we talked about, I believe it was in part 1 or part 2, was the different schools, sub-schools, and cadres of how you classify narcissism. I was really curious, man. It's quite innovative and it's quite unique. And most importantly, it's freaking effective. But I've never seen anything like it. How did you come about actually conceiving of and developing that? And then also, what has been your response from the, quote unquote, so-called experts in the medical fields of psychology, et cetera? How have they responded to your classification and your information?
Okay. Well, perhaps if I answer your second question first, I have amongst my clients, medical doctors, psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists who embrace my work, and they find that it helps them. And I actually find many of these individuals are open-minded in terms of where they can gain help from, and don't subscribe to a rigidity of approach, so that they recognize labels are there, of course, to aid through classification. And that's why I utilize them. And the classifications that I've created have been done in a way which aren't esoteric, which aren't using psychological language, because that's not my background at all. And it's part of being able to communicate it to people, but also to get you to understand that's how my kind see you all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So a psychologist will put it against a particular psychological framework. That's the genre in which they operate. That's absolutely fine. What I'm conveying to you is this is how we regard you, either consciously or unconsciously. So with regard to the individual that is the super empath, I recognize that person as a super empath. I see them as the super empath. An unaware narcissist will still pick up on the super empath traits, whether it's a majority super empath or a minority super empath. And recognize those traits. And so when I convey it to you, in another language, you could perhaps say a super empath is a somewhat difficult to conquer empath. You could give them a different label. Okay. But the point is, I'm conveying the way that we see you, so you understand that's how narcissists see us.
I see.
And that's alternative framework. And therefore, those professionals in the field find it helpful because they want to get under the bonnet of how does the mind of a narcissist work? Right. How are we seen? So I've spoken before about the fact that it's almost as if we see you in a bar situation, that the normals give off, let's say, a sort of white hue. Narcissists in the room give off a red hue, and the empaths give off varying shades of blue, azure, royal blue, etc., depending upon their classification, so that we can pick them out. And it's explaining how we see you to enable people to gain that understanding. And I came about it because it's quite simply, I'm conveying to you the way that I look at my victims, that person demonstrates codependency, that person exhibits contagion, that person has standard empathy, that person's school, and then of course the counter is layered upon it. So all I've done is utilize the way that I see the world and then packed it into categories with their own classifications and attributes. And I've got a lot more actually to tell people about all of that, so that they understand more about empaths, how empaths are formed, how particular backgrounds create certain empaths, the susceptibilities to particular types. There's a lot of work that I'm doing at the moment that's in the pipeline. So there'll be a complete series dedicated to each school and each cadre. So I've got bits and pieces about things at the moment, Doug, as you know, but there's going to be basically an entire catalogue. So it's going to be quite a momentous or monumental, or as an interviewer of Will Smith said, monumentous. That portmanteau, going to be a monumentous occasion to release that information. So that's something for everybody to look out for.
Two really quick important points on that. What you just said, you just proved, I kind of run across this in the cult community and stuff that I work with. There's nobody better to talk about it than somebody that's actually experiencing it. Now, what we get from you that's totally unique, and that, that's why I asked, or the psychologist saying, oh, just dismiss HG. It's like not, scientific or whatever. These are not narcissists that are explaining like only you can, and maybe a couple other people. I haven't met anybody yet that can actually tell you how you see it. They don't know how narcissists see it. So like you said, they're dealing with esoteric gobbledygook sometimes. It didn't make any fucking sense to me.
Absolutely.
But, I go to HG on freaking YouTube and it just worked.
Exactly. Now, there are those individuals in the medical community that I deal with. And as I say, I find a lot of them are entirely open-minded and utilize it. And they refer clients.
I'm surprised.
They refer clients to me.
Wow.
But then there'll be some who perhaps, well, I'm not entirely convinced. Well, they're entitled to take that view. It's their opinion. And then there are those which might pour scorn on me. And the reason for that is that rather than being open-minded to, actually, he's telling us the underbonnet view of how his kind operates and how he sees the world in respect of empaths, they immediately try and invalidate what I have to say. Now, who is it that engages in invalidation, I wonder?
Narcissists.
Exactly. You've nailed it, Doug. So that's what invariably happens, is that the certain ones in that community that turn around and poo-poo my work, they, as I say, there are some that might approach with skepticism, and they may have a healthy discussion with you about it. They're not narcissists. They're just probing. There are those that embrace it, those that think, well, maybe, maybe not. The ones that randomly come out and sort of invalidate it, well, we know what they are.
You don't run into some people that are just super programmed by their schooling that might reject what you have to say simply from their indoctrination, and they don't want to hear another version, even though they might not be narcissists?
That's a valid observation, Doug, but I do find that many of the people in that field actually do approach things with an open mind.
That's interesting.
It is. Might be just be the ones that I've come across, and it might be, of course, those that have come to my work. I'm naturally going to find more open-minded ones. The ones that aren't, the ones that are programmed, as you say, just don't come to me, and I never learn about that. So there's possibly a sifting that goes on. But I can recall, for instance, I won't mention her name, but there's a psychologist from the New York area who I'd spoken to many, many times in consultation. And she was very encouraging of my work because she saw how valuable it was. And I was always struck by how open-minded she was. I started doing the consultations in October 2016. She came along at the beginning of December 2016. So she was an early adopter in that respect. So, and I think she was the she was the second psychologist I spoke to. There's another lady from the United States who was a school psychologist that I'd spoken to prior to that. And this lady from the New York area was the second one that had come along. And again, adopted this very open-minded approach. And I spoke to her on many occasions dealing with various issues that she was encompassing. And it struck me, because I anticipated at first, okay, I'm probably going to face a bit of hostility here. She's an expert in this field. She'll think, oh, who are you, Charlie Big Bananas, coming along thinking you know it all, and knocking me down with all of their esoteric terms, etc. No, not at all. And I found that many people in that field have been, and I admit, I was surprised, because I did anticipate some hostility. But as I point out, it might just be the ones that come to me and want to speak to me. I'm getting the open-minded ones, and there's a load of them there who basically are programmed and indoctrinated, who just don't accept it, thus never speak to me.
I don't think you would have gotten any reach. I don't think you would have gotten any reach, HG, if your work didn't have validity and it wasn't penetrating. I'm sure that's why you got a lot of that support, because I would think that, it is just hard to break that schooling barrier. Like I said, I run into it in my community. Nobody wants to hear something brand new. I also wanted to know, like, when you were starting out and you decided to break out your first YouTube video or blog, as a narcissistic psychopath who doesn't feel fear, you were nervous a little bit, or you didn't know how it'd be received by the medical field. They're going to glom onto you, and like you say, who the fuck does this guy think he is? Did you have any of that going on when you first broke out on the scene?
I wasn't concerned by those things, and I'm certainly not anxious because I don't experience anxiety. One can have concern because that's a manifestation of a threat to control, and as you know, that's part of what I need. I didn't actually really give much consideration to what the scientific community would have to say, because when I took a look around at some of the work that was out there, I basically saw it as victim accounts which sought to validate, but were all saying the same thing and often regurgitating inaccuracies about narcissism. Okay. Then there were people that had more psychotherapists who were involved in the healing side of things, and I could see that their work was constructive, but again, they were missing out large aspects of it. And then also the more sort of rigidly scientific side of things, which was probably accurate to a large extent, but was impenetrable and difficult to understand. Consequently, I could see that within the people that were wanting to understand more about it, you either had amateur version that's incomplete and inaccurate, sort of semi-professional but has gaps, or professional but I don't really understand what they're saying, was the view that the impression that I gained from the bulk of people. Of course, there'll be people that have the capacity to understand more of the pure psychological language, but as a whole, many people don't. And when you're in a fix, you don't want all of the esoteric terms. You want solutions. Why is this happening to me? Why am I behaving this way? Why is this person doing this to me? What can I do about it? And talk to me in the language I understand. So I created a lexicon with my work that would enable people to understand, in its own classification system. I also created that classification system, obviously for ease of use, but also to then avoid any potential criticism from the more formal sources, because I would say it's my classification system. I'm not using yours. So if you were to say you don't understand it because you're misusing our classification system, I would say, well, actually, this is my classification system. This is what it all means. If you don't accept the validity of it, that's a matter for you. But it is valid because it's my view and how my kind think. And that's what people need to know and understand. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it, but you must understand it. So when I first set out, I didn't have any fear with regard to what the scientific community would think about me. I didn't give it a whole degree of being concerned about what they might think. I was more focused on, this is what I want to tell everybody. This is what you all need to understand and learn. And here are the inaccuracies that I want to correct. And here are the gaps that I want to plug as part of the extension of my legacy. But no, it's a great question, Matt.
You know, HG, I think you actually have a real chance of laying down this legacy, because it occurred to me when I was preparing for this interview just how remarkably absent real information on one of the most important subjects on the planet, particularly now, is. Again, we're back to the point. Did the narcissist suppress this information? Or, I mean, you are in a unique position to convey something that's just quite off people's radar and a little bit hidden. And again, who but a narcissist that could articulate it could actually really speak on it. It's impossible to do without. It doesn't penetrate for some reason. Do you run into problems with their various standard characteristic classifications, such as, do you differentiate a whole lot between, say, a sociopath, a narcissist, a psychopath, and you yourself, a narcissistic psychopath? Or do you go along?
I do. I mean, in the work, I don't necessarily say this is the viewpoint of the narcissist, this is the viewpoint of the psychopath, but I provide it in the round. I am creating, it's part done, where there'll be a video which basically says, these are the things that are associated with the pure narcissist. These are the things with the pure psychopath, and this is what happens with a hybrid, which I am, a narcissistic psychopath. So to give a little taster of that, narcissists need fuel. Pure psychopaths don't. I do, but my fuel needs aren't as great as that of a narcissist. So those are three distinctions between us, which means I can spend periods of time where I'm not getting much fuel, and it doesn't impact on me in the way that it would upon a narcissist. That said, the nature of my interactions are I usually get fuel pretty regularly, but if that wasn't the case, I would be able to survive for longer without fuel compared to a common or garden narcissist, if I can describe it as such. And so the work moving forward will provide those distinctions that I've just described there, Doug. and the work that exists. What I like to do is not baby my viewers or
I know you don't.
by allowing them to interpret it for themselves and say, this is a viewpoint. And they can work out, is this you, HG, or are you writing from the perspective of a middle range type A? Let them work it out. They're intelligent people for the most part that come. We get some doofuses, but we soon weed them out. But for the most part, people that embrace my work are intelligent individuals. And I would much rather they work it out for themselves. They can come and ask and I'll give them guidance, and people do. But I want you to read and listen and make your own mind up about what perspective is he talking about here, so that you forces you to address it. It makes you apply the criteria. And I see the ability that some of my long-term viewers and readers now in the comments, and they nail it. And that's a little bit of pride for HG at seeing these students getting it right because they've listened and they've worked it out.
That's very interesting. Sometimes when I listen to your videos, you have to repeat and say the same basic things. One of the things you pound home the most, which is spot on, is once you know, you go. Get out, stay out. No contact. This is a dangerous person. And here's how you do a no contact regime. If I was doing that, what you were doing, you seem calm, cool, and collected when you repeat these things and you try to get these points across. But you have faith that people can actually get it without you having to necessarily do any more than that. You trust that they can figure it out, and you found that they actually are. I mean, I know it too because I read the comments that you're talking about. But you have hope in people actually being able to understand this, where they might not in, say, a more academic setting, right?
Well, I don't rely on hope. I often explain to people that she's a false mistress. And rather, what I rely on is I know the efficacy of my work, and that people will come along. And the way that it's set up is you immerse yourself in it, you will start to get understanding. If you need more assistance, book a consultation, talk to me, and I'll guide you. And I make it very clear with people. I say, and it is an attraction for people. I've never had anybody turn around and say to me, OHG, this isn't helping me. They much prefer that I'm so brutally honest about things, and I say it as it is. That I say, look, we've an hour to discuss this. You tell me the background circumstances, and then I will give you the practical tips for moving forward. There are some people who are really stuck because of their emotional thinking. And I cut through that. And I say to people, look, I will give you the tools. And if you do what I tell you to do, you will get freedom. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
We'll get over the line. But if you do not do what I tell you to do, you're the one that loses. I still sleep my 4 hours like I'm dead. No problem. And I know that you're the one that's not done it. It's not the failure of my material. It's because you haven't done it. I will give you the guidance. I will tell you what will help you. I will give you the answers. I will give you the encouragement and also the credit where people are doing well. But if you aren't motivated to take responsibility for your own life, then you will not move forward. And people have to understand there is no magic pill. If I had to produce a magic pill that destroyed emotional thinking overnight, Doug, I'd be a very wealthy man.
I hear you. I would take that pill too, my friend.
Indeed. But the point is, there has to be some responsibility taken. In the same way, if you need to lose 3 stone, you can either chop your left leg off, which will lose 3 stone, but I wouldn't advise doing that, or you have to eat properly, exercise regularly over a period of time. 3 stone will not disappear overnight. It'll take you 3 to 6 months, depending on how much effort you put in. But you have to put the effort in, and that personal trainer will give you the best exercises. They will give you a nutrition plan. If I was that personal trainer, I would come round to your house at 6 a.m. in the morning, banging on your door saying, get out of bed, you lazy toad. You need to go. We need to do this exercise. I'll give you the right exercises. I'll give you the meals. Hell, I'll even cook the meals for you. But if you want to eat donuts and pizza and not do the running, you ain't going to lose the weight. And it's the same principle when it comes to assisting people. My information is unrivaled. It is effective, it's direct, and I will give it to you straight. If you don't apply it, you're not going to get anywhere.
You're a rare breed, man. There's very few people that won't give it into you in a no bullshit way. I personally really appreciate that because there is no magic pill. You do have to go to the gym if you want to lose weight, and there's no magic way around that.
Well, you take your own experience of getting out of the cult.
Yeah, it was hard. I had to work my ass off for it.
Exactly. Did Spider-Man come and
nope? Nobody helped me, HG. Nobody helped me.
You did it off your own ass. You took responsibility for your situation. Now, it is, of course, it's difficult for people when they're caught in that fog of emotional thinking and they don't know where to go and what to say and where to turn. And when you're in the grip of your abusing narcissist, I recognize that is a difficult situation. But the point is, you found me. Somewhere along the line, somebody recommended me to you. You did an internet search. You heard my stentorian voice calling out to you through the mist.
Yes.
Yeah. And you thought, hang on. And you've come to my door for help. You're now going to get it and be best placed to move forward. So there are many people who never have that advantage of finding out about my work. Indeed, there are many people who don't find out about narcissism at all, and they just drift through life unaware. And as I explain to my clients, not only when you understand by accessing my work what you're dealing with, and it gains you that freedom, but it is like being handed the key to the understanding of human behaviors.
Damn right it is.
Yeah. You now understand why that friend's a pain in the arse, and you now understand why your uncle and your father behaved the way that they did. And also, oh yeah, it now makes sense when I see that politician and he behaves that way. Got it. And then I see that politician and what she's saying. Got it. And all of a sudden, it unlocks so many things that you used to think, how on earth can that person stand there and say that with a clean conscience? Well, it's quite simply, one, they don't have a conscience, and two, they have a different worldview affected by their narcissism. And when you understand that, it might not mean that you can change it, but at least you're not wandering around in the fog of confusion any longer.
Man, just having that worldview broken down and understood, simply understanding HG does everything. It's the question marks. It's not being able to see the patterns. It's the fact that it all seems random. As soon as you see the patterns, the spell's over. Then the challenge becomes simply undoing the trauma, getting out, implementing the no contact regime. It's challenging, but you finally have the freaking keys to get out. Without that information, you're freaking screwed. I had a very similar experience, HG. I had two profound experiences in my life that really changed my perception of reality. And that was coming across your work in 2006. And then a few years in January 2008, I had a book dropped off on my doorstep that explained how a cult worked. And I understood that I was in one. So there is certain information that can change and rock your freaking world. And you just mentioned the politicians and stuff. You know, I can't flip on a television and I can't look at this creature, Klaus Schwab, who looks like he's freaking Darth Vader incarnate, or George Soros or Trudeau. I mean, pick your narcissist. Dude, I don't understand how other people can't see that. I do, HG, because I was under the spell of a nut job named L. Ron Hubbard, and people will never understand how I fell for that. So I do understand the mechanisms through a lot of study and hard work and through listening to your work. But it does blow my mind today where, I don't understand how people can't see that. There's a whole shitload of mechanisms behind that, right?
There is, and you see it. Let's take, for example, you brought it up earlier, Doug, about the Oscar slap. And so I've done an extensive series, which you've probably seen.
I've seen all of them, and they're fantastic.
So thank you. Analyzing what Will Smith is, analyzing what Jada Pinkett Smith is. Deep dive into the evidence from a variety of sources to make a credible and constructive assessment of what they are. Okay. And if anybody now listening to this hasn't done that, and they
please
want to do it beforehand, pause this interview and come back and listen to me and Doug a bit later. Go and listen to those, because there's a couple of spoilers about to land. So with that said, she's a narcissist, he's an empath. And then I explained that with her, like any other narcissist on this planet, when it comes to the interactions or the potential interaction with other people, we are driven by the need for the prime aims: fuel, control, character traits, and residual benefits. As I'm talking to you, Doug, I do not suspend my narcissism. I must control this interview. But it's easy to do because you and I have a good natural rapport. You ask me questions, you want to talk to me, so there's no challenges there. You can ask me challenging questions, but I relish the opportunity to explain further. You're not saying, HG, you're a goddamn arsehole and you don't know what you're talking about. It's a constructive interaction. I gain fuel from your responses. I gain the residual benefit of knowing that this reaches a lot of people and that assists with the legacy in my facade management. So I still seek the prime aims in my interaction with you, as I do when I speak to my clients and I tell them that. When I'm sat in a room on my own, I'm not pursuing the prime aims because there's nobody else there. There's nobody that I need to control. There's nobody that I need to get fuel from. There's no character traits to be drawn, and there's no opportunity for residual benefits. When as soon as I start interacting with somebody, at least one of those things must be obtained. And so I see repeatedly when I'd analysed Jada Pinkett Smith, people going, no, she's just a proud woman who was reacting to the behaviour of the press pack being nasty. No, you've completely misunderstood. She's doing what she's doing because she's a narcissist, and it's not about her being a strong woman in light of the press pack. She's doing it to assert control. In actual fact, the fact she's having her photograph taken signals that they're all under control because they're all calling out her name and they're waving at her and they're taking the pictures. So that the individual that commented, and you see that people fail to understand that a narcissist is a narcissist is a narcissist. We don't. It's not. It's not for the purposes of saying something. Piers Morgan's another good example with Harry's wife. Narc on narc action. And again, people say, oh, Piers Morgan, he's saying this because it's the truth. Yes, it's the truth in the majority perspective, but Piers Morgan's only saying it because it enables him to assert control over Harry's wife and draw fuel. He's not saying it for the sake of it being the truth. And people have to start understanding that there's the motivating factor behind what we do is always the pursuit of the prime aims, period. When there's nobody around, the prime aims don't apply. When we're contemplating involvement or there is involvement, boom, the prime aims are automatically applicable.
And you can't understand what happened with that Jada Pinkett Smith thing without the background that you're talking about. I've been studying your stuff for a while. I knew exactly what was happening. You can't unsee it once you learn this stuff. So it's like looking through a different eyes than your buddy's looking at. As you said, the tabloids are like, ooh, I wonder this, I wonder that. Exactly. Once you understand a narcissist, everything else that you're watching makes complete fucking sense, and you can decode what you're looking at easily.
Absolutely right. So when you've got that decoding ability, you will start watching some coverage, and you'll hear the reporter opining as to, oh well, it was this, and you go, no, it's not.
I know.
And you read a news article, and they talk about why Will Smith behaved that he did, and it's this and it's this. No, it's not. And you're able to decode it all, and it just shows, though, the extent to which so many people still get it wrong. Reason being, they've not been exposed to a proper deep dive explanation about what narcissism is. Even though some people will watch the videos, they will still come with an entrenched view because people just don't like to admit that they're wrong. There are some people that will come and go, actually, and this is missing a lot in the world now, the capability to go, I have this view, I've now listened to your view, and you show me some evidence that I haven't appreciated, and I'm now changing my view based on what you've explained to me. Instead, it's I'm shouting at you from this side of my echo chamber, and you're shouting at me from this side of the echo chamber, having the information being fed into the echo chamber being provided mainly by my kind. And rather than think, actually, your information is persuasive, I'm now going to shift my position. It's I can't do that. I'm not allowed to admit that because that's seen as a failure, and I'll just keep on shouting, rather than say, of course not everybody goes along that, but I've seen an increase in that kind of behavior where people are incapable of accepting the evidence. And I regularly explain to my clients the way of dealing with a narcissist is use logic and go to the evidence. So for instance, I had a client recently, the narcissist had died. She was on the phone to me crying. And I said to her, why are you crying? Because the narcissist is dead. You should be opening the champagne. And she said, well, I can't help it. And I said, I understand why you feel that way, but ask yourself, is it logical to mourn the loss of somebody who was abusing you? And he was seriously abusing her. I said, it's not. I said, the reason you're crying is your emotional thinking makes you feel sad. So you carry on thinking about him to feed your addiction. But if you stop and go to the evidence and apply logic, by the end of the telephone call, she said, I feel much, much better for have what you've explained to me, HG. But it's that point of stopping and saying, hang on a second, is my feeling, is my reaction a logical one to these circumstances? If you have a friend who was a really good friend of yours, that you laughed together and you went and watched the ball game together, and you been to each other's houses and birthday parties and been on vacation together, and they get hit by a bus after 20 years of friendship, your grief for them is logical. You've lost somebody that made a real impact upon your life in a constructive way. But to mourn the loss of somebody who's abusing you isn't logical. So tell yourself that. Go to the evidence. Look at the evidence of what's happening around you. And in so doing, you will function far more effectively.
That's such a great point. You know, you're so reminding me of when we come out of the cult, HG, we're all trauma bonded. And I've seen so many people. Now, I personally was so offended that I found out my cult leader, who I thought was mankind's greatest friend. That's what we were told in the cult. I found out in a single day he lied about everything. Yeah. That angered me enough where I didn't for a second like him after that. But my friend, I've seen so many people come out of this cult, be abused by this psychopath, have their whole life turned upside down, lose their family, you name it. And they just can't give up loving this man, this ugly, crazy, manipulative, complete psychopath. It's so heartbreaking. And that kind of brings us back to where we were starting. Like, how would you tell people to be able to get over the hardest part, which is the emotion that always seems to bring us back and always can slide us back and makes us vulnerable, no matter how much logic we use? That is the hook, that emotional, hook that you talk about all the time.
Indeed. I am different from many of you, because obviously as a narcissistic psychopath, I have a much more restricted range of emotions. I have them, but they're not immense. And there is this huge emptiness within me. And I've learned to portray myself in a way which disguises that. So, for example, in our conversations, I've learned, and I have to remind myself as I'm talking, to use a different cadence in my voice, inflection and emphasis in order to portray that particular image. Rather than, if I was to strip that away, I would just speak with the flat effect, which is there. But I've learned to mask that.
Wow.
Yeah, to fit in. Otherwise, I would speak with the flat effect that some of my kin do, because they haven't got the skill set available to them. There are other of my type who also speak in a similar way to the way that I do. They've learned to do the inflections, the emphasis, the cadences, the tones, etc. Now, the point of that is to get people to understand that when you're first confronted by this, what you have to understand is that what you've been portrayed wasn't genuine. And everything that you understood about this person was false. Everything.
Everything.
And the bad. Now, you have to be presented with the right information about what you've been dealing with to understand. But you also then have to take responsibility by applying that evidence and logic yourself. If I was just to go, here's the complete works of HG Tudor, you're now cured. No, they're not. They're going to have to read it and apply it and exercise some discipline to keep doing so, because in those early stages, the power of the addiction and the emotional thinking, as you know yourself, as you came out of that cult, and as you've just described in respect of other former cult members, the programming that they've been subjected to and the emotional thinking that they have is so strong.
It really is.
You have to fight against it. And like Japanese knotweed, if you're not careful, it will grow back very quickly.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be in a state of hypervigilance, but what it does mean is you have to take responsibility for your own health, if I can describe it as such, when it comes to dealing with the narcissist. You access the information, and then you recognize it is incumbent upon me to remind myself that this information tells me that that person was a false prophet, that they lied, that their actions were not genuine, that they are a manipulator. And I have to understand and recognize that. Even though I can feel that sensation within me that's telling me to still love them, I have to turn and say, you're an imposter. Your emotional thinking. You are trying to make me continue to love somebody who logically I should not love. And you have that battle of the logic against the emotion. And in those early stages, you have two distinct disadvantages. One, the power of that emotional thinking is very high because you've been immersed in the world of that narcissist. And therefore, your emotional thinking has been fed. So it's really, really high. And the second problem that you've got, emotions are faster than intellect. Okay, so take, for example, you're in high dudgeon, Doug, because you've not been invited to a birthday party. And you're cursing and muttering, and it's this person that you know, why have I not been invited? Your pride's dented and you're annoyed. And you're sounding off to your friend, who happens to go by the name of the voice of reason, which is rather handy, who turns to you and says, but Doug, this person that you're annoyed with for not inviting you, you don't really like them, do you? That much is true, you admit. And then they say, all the other people who are going on this birthday weekend, you've described as vacuous, materialistic and empty-headed. You don't really like their company either. No, that much is true also. Thirdly, this is going to cost you a few $1,000s to go on this birthday weekend, money that you'd much rather spend in the knowledge vault with HG Tudor. You could save that money. That much is true also. And you were going to go hiking that weekend and find your inner zen up in the mountains. So if you go on this birthday weekend, you can't do that thing that you enjoy. That much is true. Why the hell are you getting worked up about this birthday invitation? And when you do that, you take responsibility by telling yourself evidence, 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 evidence. The logic fits in behind it, and it will temper those emotions. Your emotions surge first. The dent to your pride, your anger surges, and then you have to go, whoa, boy, I recognize you for what you are. Remember, anger is a natural emotion, and anger serves a purpose. You see some dude getting assaulted by three guys, you get angry about that and you wade in. Your anger gave you the strength to fight them off. So it serves a purpose. Somebody's got children, the car goes into the river, they're angry that they can't rescue their kids because the door won't come free. They sort of have a sudden surge of strength and they wrench that door open and they save the children. So anger does serve a purpose. So you're right to be angry, but it's not logical to continue to perpetuate that anger. And so what you have to do is recognize, is my response a logical one? Take that responsibility, and you have to train your brain, and it's eminently trainable, to have that initial moment where you think to yourself, wait, I'm getting myself all worked up, but is it logical that I do so? And you stand back and you examine it. It's a process of metacognition, where you analyze your thoughts and behaviors and think to yourself, I'm getting worked up, but should I? Actually, now I come to think of it, you could write it down on a piece of paper. Reasons to be cheerful, reasons why I shouldn't lose my temper. Write them down, and you'll find that has a calming effect on you because you're applying logic, and it immediately dissipates those. It might not get rid of it entirely, but for some people, it extinguishes the emotional thinking.
HG, I can't tell you how many diaries I had, and this isn't even my thing. I never kept diaries. Just simply taking it out of my head and putting it onto paper. And even what I do on my YouTube channel, what I call video diaries, I got to tell you, my friend, taking it out of the head and putting it down does increase that logic. And that's what it's all about, because as you know, if you have some empathy, well, I guess you wouldn't know, but you know logically, if you have some empathy, it's always constantly battling with the emotions, projecting on the other person that you're dealing with that they wouldn't possibly be trying to manipulate you. You see people kind of the way that you see yourself. So in a way, it kind of makes me a little bit distrusting too, particularly what I've been through, because I want to be open or whatever, but there's all those issues of like, you know what I'm talking about getting sucked back in with these frickin' people.
Sure.
And another thing, real quick, HG, if you don't mind, before I forget, on the subject that you're talking about, I had to kind of get, kill my parents off in my mind. When a lot of us left the cult, there's family that we have to leave behind. And if you're married to a narcissistic spouse, you stumble across HG's material, and you find out you're with a monster and you're in deep trouble. Like, getting out of these things can be, do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's so freaking challenging to try to.
Well, it is, because it's all consuming as well. Because let's say, let's take a parental narcissist, for example. You can't that's what
HG, I'm sorry to interrupt, man. That's what I wanted to get to. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. That's what I wanted to say. You have to be able to kill off the parent. I had to be able to kill off my parents. How would you advise somebody to, because you said in one of your videos, you have to desensitize that parent. It's not your mom, it's a narcissist. But how do you do that without, how do you kill when you naturally have emotions? How do you actually do that?
You have to remind yourself of what it is that you're actually dealing with and strip away the illusion. So commonly, it's a case of, I can't go no contact, she's my mother. Stop there. Ask yourself, what are the credentials of a mother? Well, biologically, she's the person that gave birth to you. You were fired out of her nether regions many years ago. Okay, so biologically. But then the concept of a mother is much wider. And as I've learned from other people, because I didn't experience this myself, it's an individual that takes care of you, provides you with, exhibits emotional empathy towards you, treating you honestly, providing you with a strong moral compass, guiding you in life, clothing, feeding you, hydrating you, looking out for you, giving you emotional support, and so on and so forth. Those are the credentials for a mother or a father, that they don't heap their woes on you, they suck them up. So you don't end up parenting the parent, that they don't live entirely vicariously through you. Now, of course, a healthy parent has pride in their children. There's a degree of vicarious delight. Of course there is. But I don't mean the wholesale character trait acquisition that a narcissist would endure. So you establish, what do I understand by the concept of a parent? Right. I've written all of those markers, those criteria down. Now, let me look at this person that masquerades as my parent. Do they fit any of those things? No. They might fit one or two or three or four of them, because some narcissists will, but there'll be a lot absent. So then you have to remind yourself, this person was passing off the appearance of a parent.
Wow.
Yeah. You have to remind yourself of that, and then you dehumanize them, which I know some people don't like because it feels cruel. At the end of the day, you are going to have to make some difficult decisions, but you must not look at them as your parent. Biologically, yes, but beyond that, no. And you tell yourself, this person did not parent me. They do not deserve the title of parent. Therefore, I do not see them as such. Either call them by their Christian name or call them the narcissist. And then recognize, although I feel compelled to have a relationship with them, what will that relationship actually bring to me? Well, what can I look at to tell me what it will bring to me? I know I will look at past behavior. So this person beat me when I was a defenseless child and has always told me how I should live my life as an adult. And when I needed some financial help, told me, get lost. And also has always criticized my choices, has laughed at me when I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer and said that I was too dumb to become one. So those are the behaviors that I've been subjected to. I've been belittled, invalidated, triangulated, physically beaten, emotionally unsupported. So this is what I am exposed to. How long has this gone on for? Well, let's say you're 35 years old. You might be able to remember from about 8 or 9 years on, maybe a little earlier. So the past 25 to 30 years, you've experienced this. Therefore, why would they be any different going into the future? Leaving aside the fact that I tell you the narcissist will never change, you can park that thought for a moment, but ask yourself logically, this person has behaved like this for the last 30 years. Why would they behave any differently? Did they show change at 15 years? No, they didn't. So again, go to the evidence of that behavior and remind yourself, what it is you're dealing with. Go to the evidence. They did not parent me. They have abused me. They've never changed, so why would they change now? And then ask yourself, logically, why should I feel obligated to have a relationship with somebody who has abused me my entire life?
Right.
If you were to go and find a stranger who basically said, hi, I'm dodgy crazy man that lives in the sewer, and what I'm going to try and do is gouge your eyes out and then chop your head off and have sex with your lifeless corpse, I think you'll go, fuck that shit, Sky High, I'm out of here. But so ask yourself, you can recognize that in Mr. Crazy Man who lives in the sewer, that you don't want to be abused by him. So make the same call when it comes to that abuser who's been in your life before. Recognize them for what they are through the evidence. Push down that emotional thinking by the application of logic. Strip it away. And you can always talk to me and I'll reinforce these messages for you. I cut through the crap that when somebody comes, I go, no, that's emotional thinking, and I'll explain why. And they'll go, oh yeah, I didn't see that. Thanks for pointing that out. I grasp it now, because I'm objective and dispassionate, and I'm the expert. I'm not in the fog that you're in, so I can see the things that you can't. But most people, when I point it out, they're receptive to it. Sure, the fog can come back again if they're not careful. But at least they point it out, and then they have a choice. And you can make an informed choice as an adult then. What do I want to do with my life?
Well said. Plus, you mentioned earlier, how you can recognize the obvious abuser in the back alley, but sometimes with our parents or our loved ones, it's subtle. And hence we need to learn the tools, because the gaslighting is so extreme. Yeah. You can't even tell if you're dealing with a savior or the devil sometimes. Exactly.
Well, quite simply, that in order to be effective, going back to the point I made about altering my tone and cadence and so forth, so that I don't sound like a Dalek when I talk, in a sort of flat, static voice, because people are turned off by that and go, oh no. So I have this deep voice, and I adopt, as I say, the cadence and so on and so forth. And many people are attracted by my voice, both in terms of my listeners and in my private life. And therefore, what is that? It's a weapon. It enables me to fit in and draw people in, so they don't see me for what I am, and that I adopt all of the things that make me seem to you that I am a normal individual, because that's what we as abusers have to do. Because as I pointed out before, if I strolled up to a lady in Lorenzo's bar and said, hello, my name's HG Tudor, I'm a narcissistic psychopath, would you like it if I abused you for the rest of your life by you being my girlfriend? Thank you very much. She'd scream, throw a strawberry daiquiri in my face and run away, and I've just lost control of her. So as you say, people can recognize the obvious. The point is, we invariably are not the obvious, because that's how we get to you. In the same way as an abuser of a child is the everybody loves him football coach, but he's got a dark secret because he physically abuses the children under his charge. And that fun uncle has inveigled his way into the family unit and is sexually abusing his niece. And that colleague who you thought was really helpful to begin with, you now realize is stealing your credit, snitching on you to the boss, and has just scuppered your promotion. They had to fit in first to gain your trust and gain the information from you.
Makes total sense. HG, would another word for a true narcissist be a great actor? Because it's all fake. It's all phony, right? You have to bolt on characteristics from other people. You have to mimic or steal from other people. Like, I hope you don't, if this is too personal, please don't ask. You don't have to answer anything. I don't want to ask anything that's too personal. But you were just mentioning, when we're talking right now, how you put on this accent, the certain inflection. And I was wondering what actually lies behind that. Like, if you were honest, are you hating me constantly? Are you judging me? Is there some is the creature around? How do you really feel? If you don't mind me asking, but you put it on so well, HG. You're so convincing, and a good actor or a narcissist has to be. So I don't even know what lies behind you, and it might be totally different than it has to be totally different than what you project, right?
What lies there is nothing. It's a void.
That's crazy when you say that. That's so it's like Jason Bateman, or not Jason Bateman, Bateman in American Psycho, where he says there's no Patrick Bateman. There's literally no one there. It really is that, man.
It is. People often say, "Oh, what about people finding out who you are, HG? And I say, well, they never will. I'm a ghost. I actually don't exist.
That's
And
crazy.
I don't exist in two ways. One, there is no real concept of what I am. I am an artifice and a construct. But moreover than that, because of what I do professionally, I'm actually trained to be that thing as well. So that's because of what I am naturally, it enables me to do what I do professionally brilliantly. And the whole point is, you asked, am I sat there hating you? No, I'm not, because you're not threatening my sense of control. There will be instances where, for instance, I might be interviewed by somebody and all they're doing is talking at me. And so when are you going to ask me a question? And I start to get irritated. But because of the level of control I have over my ignited fury, I don't say, Christ almighty, this is boring. When are you going to start asking me a fucking question? I exhibit the appearance of patience. But believe me, in my head, because of the triple tracking that goes on, I'm thinking to myself, I quite happily find out where this person is, burn down their house while they watch and smash up their recording equipment at the same time, and then say, now try asking me a fucking question.
That's what you really feel like doing if you had to translate it into physical activities as to what's going on emotionally? Because everybody gets irritated, HG.
Of course they do.
When they're waiting there.
But I have... I, of course, have that hypersensitivity to the issue of control. And so I'm scanning and monitoring. So the whole time that you and I are talking, my narcissism is monitoring, is Doug under control, is Doug under control. Every second that elapses,
really?
It's asking that question. And it answers, yes, he is, because he's being polite, he's being pleasant, he's asking you questions, he's listening to you, he's showing non-verbal cues that demonstrate that he understands what you're saying. He's under control, he's under control, he's under control, he's under control. If you started to threaten my control, then there'd be an alternative response. But because I'm the ultra, I wouldn't immediately start insulting you. I would perhaps make a remark in a pithy way, tell a joke, exhibit some charisma that would bring you back round under my control. That's the starting for me. If necessary, I can go dark, but remember, there's an audience listening. So if I started lashing out at you, I'm aware, first of all, you don't give me occasion to, but let's just say you did.
Thank you.
And I start behaving that way. A little bit like the politician on television who suddenly rips off his mic and goes, I'm not standing for this, and storms off.
Right.
What do the audience all think? What an entitled prick he is. He's not getting my vote. He's just lost a load of votes. So his narcissism has cut his nose off to spite his face. You're a politician. You're there to be accountable and scrutinized. The journalists, they might have an agenda against you because they're left wing and you're right wing. But deal with it. That's what you're there to do. But those particular narcissists, their skill set isn't sufficiently strong to enable them to keep that ignited fury under control. So we see it, and they assert control by being argumentative, and then they move to the third assertion of control by ripping the mic off and storming off set. They've gained the control, but the collateral consequence is what? People think that they're a douchebag, and they think, I'm not going to vote for that douche canoe because of that performance. Whereas with me, my narcissism is always aware of how it's betrayed. Now, let us say the recording had stopped and you threatened my control. Again, I'm more likely to respond in a benign way. Why? I'm thinking ahead. I have good interviews with Doug. It brings new people to the party. We've established a rapport. So getting medieval on his ass, HG, isn't going to be a good thing to do because it damages that asset, because I see you as an asset. Because after all, you are clients, remember, to me. But let's say I thought that I was dealing with somebody who'd interviewed me. I thought they were a very poor interviewer and they got a very small channel, and I actually found it really tedious and they asked me stupid questions. I might be minded to make a remark to put them in their place and assert control, and I don't really care if they don't invite me back again because they're of no benefit to me. It's always the assessment through the prime aims. What can this person do for me? How can I control them? How can I maintain that control? I gain the fuel from them. What's the residual benefit? That's what's going on the whole time, triple tracking away. So when you and I are talking, I'm thinking about what my answer to you is, and at the same time, I'm anticipating what's coming ahead, and then a section of my mind is thinking on something else entirely different.
And when judging by the amount of content you somehow miraculously be able to pump out every day, you have to be working on videos as we're talking too, right?
Well,
How are you not, dude? I don't know how do you get everything done. You're almost encouraging people to become narcissists, HG, because I don't want to control the world. I don't want to leave a legacy. But it's that monster that makes your kind ambitious, where you will rise to the top and you will accomplish shit. It's kind of a dichotomy of.
Well, there are empathic individuals that are driven and ambitious. They do exist, but they are smaller in number than our kind.
And they don't want to control they don't want to control everybody.
They don't want to control the world. No, that's right. Whereas we do. And that's why most world leaders have come from our kind. Not all, but most. And that's why a lot of the people at the top of the organizations and the military organizations and the religious orders.
Therapy session, therapists, you name it, HG. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be doing a video shortly, which is about the narcissist therapist, that sheds light on the different types there are and how they impact upon people. What they do.
Yes, that's excellent. That needs to be
give
out
people
there.
A more informed view about all of that. There's quite a few.
Excellent.
But yeah, when you're talking, I naturally mute you and do a bit of recording on the side for my next video.
I know you do. I mean, it's okay. I'm not offended.
You blow me wide open, Doug. I mean, what can I say? I just hang my head in shame.
I didn't mean to blow your cover. I mean, clearly you have to be doing that.
Clearly. Actually, I have 15 minions that I rescued, a bit like.
I know. Stop bragging. I know you do. I know. Just because I'm sitting here alone and you get to party it up as a narcissist. It's not freaking fair.
Well, you know how Willy Wonka rescued the Oompa Loompas from that island? So I found this island in the South Pacific with these minions on, and I said, you can come back. And fortunately, everybody amongst those minions has the exact same voice as I do. So it's not me.
I know there's 15 of you and you're cloned. I mean, there's no other explanation. I've been tracking you for a while. I can't put together. And then you mentioned the other day, by the way, I want to be the first to congratulate you. In a couple weeks, give or take, you're going to hit the YouTube extravaganza of 100,000 subscribers. And if anybody deserves it, it's freaking you.
Thank you.
There's no explanation, HG. You mentioned the other day that you had another website where I think you read books or something. I was like, how the fuck does this guy have time to do the blog, the consultations? You pump out 5 videos a day. They're super researched. It's not tabloid at all. It's like clearly you're not busting those out in 5 minutes. No. How that do you is it's the narcissism that's actually making you and driving you to leave this legacy. And you can and with all the work you've done, HG, you feel no comfort, you feel no moment where you can relax, no satisfaction.
No, you're absolutely right about that, and it's useful for you to point that out for listeners. I'm always driven. I am like the proverbial cat on a hot tin roof. I'm not sort of leaping around, but I don't sit doing nothing. That's a waste for me.
Wow.
I can sit with a glass of scotch and ruminate on what I need to plan as I watch the sun go down, but I'm still doing something. But just sort of, I recall occasionally if I travel on a train and I see people just staring out of the window or asleep, and I think, you're wasting time.
Wow.
But I recognize it's their life choice, and so be it. But for me, it isn't an appropriate one. I must always be doing, as you know, I don't need a lot of sleep. And as a part of the formation of this legacy, alongside what I do professionally, it behooves me to create this content that has to be properly researched, that I deal with all of the other things that I deal with in a machine-like manner. Important because it enables me to do what? Get the prime aims. So control, draw fuel. The fuel in my private life is far more important. Gain some character traits, but most importantly of all, when it comes to what I call blog world, the YouTube channel and all of those things, that relates to the creation of my legacy, because that is how I will evade that ultimate threat to my control, which is death. And the fact is, every time I see somebody write something stupid about narcissism, that offends my sense of control. Sometimes I will set them straight, or I'll make a note and think I will do a Tudor treatment video, point out why that's incorrect. Or I just dismiss it by thinking they're an idiot, and I stay in a position of withdrawal. So I assert the control, but that's what happens each time I see somebody who writes something nonsensical or idiotic or plain dangerous about narcissism. When people ask questions, that impacts upon the need to assert control. And I would want to respond to them, all of them, but I can't because there isn't enough time to do so. So I just have to leave it and move beyond it, and that doesn't create a problem for me. But my initial reaction is to want to respond, because that enables me to assert control by interacting directly with that commenter on YouTube.
Right.
And I get thousands of comments. So every single day there is this moment of assert control directly. No, haven't got the time to do it, therefore must assert control by moving on and staying in position of withdrawal. And instead perhaps making a note of the most common observations. What irritates me, and my irritation gets expressed, is when I see people asking me. Only the other day somebody asked me something that appertained to a video that I put out an hour earlier, and I thought to myself, are you shitting me here? You're asking me about something that is specifically mentioned in the title of the video that was uploaded an hour earlier. What? You're on my channel, how can you not see it? So they didn't give me an explanation. But there is also part of it that people don't use the search facility when they ought to do, because there is a wide, I acknowledge that there's a lot of material there and there's a lot to wade through, but the answers are in there. Have a little bit look around. And of course, there are some very helpful commenters that dive in and explain to people, he's done a video about this. And I appreciate those viewers that do that. That is helpful.
Speaking of helpful, you know what's really interesting? Now, you're a unique case when it comes to a narcissist, because clearly you're providing a service. Okay, it's self-driven. It's not done out of empathy, but there's no doubt we have a narcissist on this planet in the name of HG who's doing a serious service to mankind. Now, what would you say, HG? Because I've been wrestling with this with you and the conversations that we have after when I ruminate on what we talk about. My original, when we first started the first interview, it was like, HG, help me take down the narcissist. Not take down, help me. How do we spread awareness to narcissism so we can, because even though you guys are a smaller percentage, you seem to dominate. You seem to create a lot of damage. So my initial thing was, we need to, get rid of these guys, rise up empaths, whatever, wake up the normals, whatever, man. But I've been thinking about what you've been saying in your videos and stuff. And I know all narcissists are not bad. You'll point to Steve Jobs or whatever that, we wouldn't have Apple, etc. But I wanted to ask you, how would you explain to listeners, so you push get out, stay out. Once you know, you go, like no contact. And yet at the same time, a narcissist like Steve Jobs, for example, would be surrounded by people who would invariably, he'd be damaging their lives. He would be hurting them, HG. What I'm asking you is there such a thing as like a paradox of a helpful narcissist or a non-damaging, I guess, is what I'm asking narcissist? Or is it blanket across the board and stay the fuck away from them?
It is the case that, let's take Steve Jobs. He created this company and many of us use those devices. Has Steve Jobs harmed you into doing so? No. There will be some people working in a Chinese sweatshop that will beg to differ. There will be his partner who he was unpleasant to, and then his daughter who he didn't recognize for a long time, that would say, irrespective of the great achievements of Steve Jobs, the guy was an arsehole. So there is always somebody that suffers because of a narcissist. There is never a situation whereby nobody is harmed. I help millions of people through my work. You go and ask my ex-girlfriends, do they think that I'm a kind person? They will answer, no, he's not.
Wow.
You ask some of my commercial military business rivals, and they will say he is a hard-nosed bastard, steer clear of him, because they've suffered as a consequence of threatening my sense of control. Ask my friends, they will say he's a great guy, he's a great laugh down the pub, he's generous. There'll be those that are unaffected, and there'll be those that are affected terribly by my conduct and those of other narcissists, and then there are other people who aren't. And actually their lives are enhanced because they're not proximate to the narcissist. So many pop stars are narcissists, and this always goes back to this idea of when they say never meet your heroes. So you idolize that pop star, you bought their records, or you now stream their music, and you watch them in concert, and maybe back in the day you had that poster on your wall and you knew everything about them, and they enriched your life. It was exciting, it was fun, it was carefree. And then you met them and they treated you like a turd on the bottom of their shoe because actually they're a narcissist and they couldn't be bothered. They wanted to go and nail a groupie rather than chat to you. And you think, gosh, he was really rude. And you end up getting upset and hating them. And you might attribute it to, oh, I guess he's just really busy. The old emotional thinking kicks in. I guess he's really busy. No, there's a good chance he's a narcissist. And because he could say, I'm sorry, I don't have time, I've got another commitment. But he was downright rude to you, dismissive and insulting and so forth. And so even that narcissist, when he was on your bedroom wall or she was on your bedroom wall, when she was on the stage, when she was in your ears, not a problem. As soon as you met them, proximate, there's the problem. And that's just a little example. And that narcissist will have a string of damaged individuals as a consequence of, and hurt individuals as a consequence of their romantic liaisons. And probably a member of the family who's been scapegoated by them will say, oh yeah, my brother, everybody loves him and they think he's a great guitarist. The guy's an absolute asshole. He banged my wife. He used to rob my money before he became famous. There's always somebody that's a victim of a narcissist in the sense of it being a downside, always.
Interesting. By the way, I can't tell you how disillusioned I became, working myself up the Hollywood ladder and finding out that these people I used to look up to, there's a hell of a lot of narcissists in Hollywood. I don't think I have to tell you that.
Absolutely. It's probably one of the biggest concentrations in the world.
It has to be.
Yeah.
And by the way, young man, you would A, fit in perfectly, and B, why don't you have a voiceover agent so you can skip the YouTube channel and make a hell of a lot more money as a voiceover artist?
It keeps getting mentioned to me, and I did have some involvement with a little audition for a couple of things.
Nice.
A gentleman, I won't name who he was, but he was very helpful and gave me his time gratis and some pointers. And I've been a bit remiss because I've been so busy with other things about the direction he gave me towards sorting out a voiceover agent. It's on the to-do list because
you need to do that.
Yeah, I've got a great voice, but also it would just really amuse me that somebody's watching the latest advertisement for next BMW, and they go, "Holy shit, that's HG Tudor talking."
Funny, dude.
That would bring a degree of a twisted delight to me that somebody's
That's
there
very funny.
eating their cornflakes and then spray them all over the living room as they think, shit, that narcissistic psychopath's now doing advertisements for BMW.
Hey, they have enough voiceover and compression on the voice. They could do wonders with your voice. You have the voice and the accent. Let them do the magic. People probably won't even know by the time it's done processing.
Yeah,
but you know that about yourself, right? I mean, you would definitely be able to get a voiceover agent out here in Hollywood, just so you know, if you're ever interested.
I need to do something about it. It's something I would like to do, actually.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
HG, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I mean, we've already gone way over an hour, but this is a perfect place to wrap up. Like,
certainly.
Should you, you don't have any. I couldn't help but notice in one of your live streams, I don't know if you were joking or not, but you said that you may actually reveal to the world, particularly your fans, maybe to begin with, who you are. Were you joking on that? And if not, how would that affect your legacy? How would that affect people now knowing who you are? And would it free you up to become an actor? Is that your dream?
Good question. Well, the first thing is it can never happen whilst I do what I do professionally. And then there would have to be a cooling off period after that. And I still find what I do professionally stimulating and rewarding. So
I wish I knew what it was, man. God damn it. I need to. I hope you do show us who you are.
Well, maybe one day I will reveal what it is. But for the meantime, that precludes me from revealing who I am.
I understand.
And for the purposes of the dissemination of the information, people don't need to know who I am. They just need to know about the information. But I understand this huge curiosity.
Yeah, it's not only a huge curiosity, but doesn't doesn't your narcissism demand that your face takes credit before you shuffle off this mortal coil as to who you are?
Because so long as I know, people have often said, "Oh, you're creating a legacy, but how can you do that behind a pseudonym?" Because I know it's me. I don't.
True.
So let's say I'm called John Smith. I'm not, but let's say I was. I don't need them to know it's John Smith. If I see somebody on the tube in London reading one of my books, it will amuse me that that's my great, and also that they don't know that the author sat opposite them. Because what you've got to remember is, because of what I am and what I do, that although I'm well known within particular circles of what I do professionally, my style is not the blatant whoring myself out as a complete fame prostitute that certain narcissists do. And that's partially because of my psychopathy, that I don't need that level of, it's the knowledge of what I do, not necessarily all of the recognition. The fact that I know that people read HG Tudor and watch it, believe me, I want more people watching my videos. I do too. Yeah, I get irritated by the fact that they don't get the views that they.
They're shadow banning you, dude. As I'm sure you know, they're unsubbing people, and you're definitely a threat on YouTube. And you weren't before until you started growing. And I don't think that they want anything that has real knowledge kind of on YouTube at all, to be honest with you.
I think you're right about that, and they are shadow banning, and it shows with regularly people saying, I wasn't notified about this, I've been unsubscribed from you and I had to find out. And the way
it's a real thing. And your channel's definitely been going through that. I've noticed just on the view count and everything. It's you're definitely being shadow banned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, what's more important than seeing some cats or learning about something that actually saves your life?
It's so stupid, dude. I mean, HG, I've watched, there's two people in particular, I won't say their name out loud, but they steal your material, I'm sure you know, and they have a hell of a lot more views than you are, and they water it down, they don't give you credit, and they fuck it up. And yet it just sells on YouTube because you're talking about serious shit. It's not tabloidy. It's vital education. You deserve 1 million views and 1 million subscribers. It'd be nice because then your freaking information could actually get out there. But we seem to be living in a narcissist reality where truth is sort of suppressed, and dross and narcissism and the lowest common denominator seems to be at the top.
Well, the point is, of course, that's why so many of our kind are able to maintain control. It's bread and circuses.
Totally.
I've remarked before, I pump out a series of videos dealing with a man whose finger is metaphorically, not quite literally, on the nuclear button to allow you to understand precisely what he is, and he gets several thousand views. I then do something which takes the piss out of Harry's wife, and it gets 5 times the number of views. People's priorities, but at the end of the day, they're their priorities. I can't change that.
I'm just glad you keep going despite that, because that would be really frustrating for me, man. Seriously, you just seem to keep pumping on. And
the way that I look at it is, it continues to go upwards. I bring new people in. It does bring. It also has the indirect benefits of the number of people that come and consult with me, that go to the knowledge vault, etc. And whilst I recognise that there are other people that get more views than I do, and it irritates me, particularly when they bastardise my material.
I understand, man.
And in certain instances where it's a wholesale lift of it, I go after them, and I've dealt with people successfully.
Good.
Yeah. In other instances, it becomes a little bit harder because they pull strands from it, and then YouTube just don't listen in such circumstances. And I haven't got to the stage where I'm going to abseil down the side of their building and meet them in the night and say, better fucking stop it. But who knows, it might go in that direction if I feel that strongly about it. But what I do is think I will take care of my audience, who are very loyal, continue to provide them with the information that helps them. They will continue to spread news about my work, and that's how we get around it.
You're still killing it, and your subscribers and views keep going up, despite working uphill against the YouTube algorithm gods. And you don't need bigger and better things coming for you, I feel, my friend. HG, before we, first of all, I really appreciate you taking the time, because you're a guy that helped save my life several years ago, and I very much value you. So thanks for coming on again and giving me the privilege to speak with you multiple times. And before we end off, could you please tell the audience what services you provide, where they can avail themselves of your information, and anything else you'd like to say before we end off?
Certainly. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to another engaged session between Doug and myself. I know people regularly feedback how much they enjoy listening to these interviews, and we will speak again. That's doubtless the case. In terms of accessing my expertise, you can do so through my YouTube channel, which is Knowing the Narcissist, the Ultra, HG Tudor. You can find my blog, narcissite.com. Those platforms also feed through onto Facebook and Twitter. If you want my help, look in the menu bar or the video descriptions, where you can access me to detect whether you're dealing with a narcissist, to ascertain whether you're an empath, and you can access the audio consultation to speak to me so that I can unravel your difficulties and point you in the direction and get you over the line to freedom. I have a knowledge vault, which is chock full of brilliant material that'll help you understand more about narcissism and yourself and what you need to do to get towards that freedom, along with some more entertaining pieces, which are linked to narcissism, but also I'm a big believer in entertaining education as well, because then it sinks in. I've arranged books on Amazon as well. You just search HG Tudor and they will come up. And quite simply, my parting message to people is, come to my work and you won't need the answers from anywhere else, and avoid the misinformation that's out there. It's not going to help you. You're intelligent people. You'll be able to work it out. Read the testimonials. Everything you need, you'll find in the work that I provide by you. Thank you.
That's perfectly said, and it is invaluable. You are one of a kind, my friend. HG, if we ever get to speak again, I can't wait. And thanks again for your time, my friend.
You're welcome.
Take care.